Hi and welcome to the Bookkeepers Podcast. I'm Zoe Whitman. I'm here with Jo Wood and Abi Rogers. Hi everyone. Let us know if you're here live or if you're watching a replay. It's really good to see you here. Abi's a good friend of mine, and Abi, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. But in my mind, you're like a mindset business extraordinaire. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about what you do and what your background is?
Yeah, so essentially, I guess what I do now is helping people really get to the bottom of all the really deep subconscious stuff that is limiting them from achieving their full success and their true potential. So often we talk about mindset, and there are loads of great things you can do on the surface to shift your mindset. But often behind that, there's all sorts of trauma, anxiety, fears, and stuff going on in your subconscious mind that you're not aware of even. So we work through our limiting beliefs often, but there's quite often this sort of substructure of stuff going on in the background that we're not even conscious of most of the time. So I help people work through that. And my journey started out 6 years ago. I did my training, so it's probably 8 or 9 years ago now that I first had some hypnotherapy, and that's what set me on this journey. It was initially for stage fright, but it just opened up this amazing can of worms in terms of confidence and clarity and focus, and just like feeling like myself for the first time ever, which was fantastic, and feeling like I could be the real me. And it's really helped me. I've been on a big journey in terms of learning how all the neuroscience and everything that goes on in our minds is related to manifestation and creating the life that we want. So the last 2 or 3 years has been really focused on that and understanding like how it all knits together and how we can optimize our minds for success. So that's where I am, and I'm loving it.
Oh, I love this, and I'm really pleased you said about the science. So Jo and I think sometimes we talk about topics around mindset, and you mentioned manifestation and abundance, and people might think they're kind of woo words. I'd certainly believe in setting a goal and making a plan to get there, and like deciding what you want, and that helps you to, however you see it, whether the universe like provides or you seek it out or whatever.
Yeah.
Having that intention helps you to get there. You've got a science background as well, haven't you? Because I know when we spoke, I've had hypnotherapy with Abi, but like to tell everyone that background. But and I thought, oh, that a load of rubbish, hypnotherapy, Paul McKenna on the TV. Like, is this really a thing? But you mentioned the science of it. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, that's funny enough exactly where I was with it as well before I ever had hypnotherapy myself, and I was like, yeah, is this really going to work? It's all just fluff, isn't it? But actually, lots of neuroscience, there's loads of good neuroscience and psychology research that the mode of hypnotherapy I was trained in is based on. And yeah, I was kind of blown away in my own journey of therapy through that, like how much of it was science based and how much I could use that in my own life to kind of see how I could maintain the changes going forward and so on. And it's just really heavily based in that. But the last couple of years I've kind of started getting curious about manifestation, because it's talked about a lot in the online space, and initially I was a bit like, yeah, I'm not really sure. But the more I've worked on understanding the neuroscience and psychology side of things, the more it's like, oh, that's why we can manifest. And you're totally right. Action, goal setting, taking aligned actions with what we want is absolutely crucial, however you look at it, whether you're looking at it from a more spiritual perspective or whether you're looking at it from like the science boots on and you're going about it that way. But it's all about the aligned action, and it's about being really clear on what you want and setting those goals from a place of like alignment with what you do really want deep down in the first place. But if you get those things together, then it all starts to come out in the wash. So yeah,
it's really interesting, like talking about the fact like hypnotherapy and like Zoe saying about Paul McKenna and things, because we do think sometimes, hypnotherapy is about turning people into chickens on stages. Like that was our initial thought, wasn't it? That was in the 90s. It became kind of like, a performance technique rather than this, scientific. And actually it's so funny because I've actually done quite a bit of work, and I've been and seen Paul McKenna, and he actually is very good friends and with the guy that created NLP. So actually there is a lot, and he's used his, techniques later on to be more about, the scientific side of things, but it got him a name. He used it like that. But my first experience with hypnotherapy, which I found was quite strange to be suggested, it was when I was actually working in an accountancy firm as a trainee, and my school bully turned up and got a job as well there. And I really struggled because it wasn't self-sabotage. She was trying to sabotage my career. She was making phone calls. She was telling me, she was getting people into it as well. Like, oh, tell Joe we're going to this place for lunch. And I'd turn up and there'd be no one there. Like, it was nasty. It was bullying, right? It was bullying.
Yeah.
But I went to my GP at the time and I was like, I'm depressed. I don't know what to do. I think but I'd lost my confidence. So I didn't want to get another job because I'd lost my confidence. And it was my GP. So this is like 1998, suggested finding a hypnotherapist to help me. So I was really lucky to be introduced. And because it came from a medical kind of suggestion, that I did that. But it was obviously things are very different now and we can access it a lot more. But I was paying, I think, about £70 an hour to go and sit in a room. And I was sitting on a couch with a gentleman that was talking to me. And it did help. It really did help. It helped me it helped me build the confidence to leave that job and find somewhere else and realize I didn't need to. I felt like I had to prove myself and tell everybody that I wasn't this person that she was saying, but actually I just needed to get out of the situation. And it gave me the confidence to do that. And I've always utilized it as a tool now in tough situations. Actually, I now, meditate, relax in the morning it's only 10 minutes every day. And I set an intention and I just sit and I'm trying to be present with my thoughts. I'm not very good at doing it for very long, but I can manage about 10 minutes. And I try and do it before I pick up the phone in the morning when I'm just like in that sleepy kind of state. I think it works better for me because or else my brain kicks in and then I can't access that subconscious. That's got to be something to do with science, isn't it, Abby? Is there certain times of the day where it's a good idea to kind of try and utilize some of these techniques?
Yeah, I think we all have our own kind of daily rhythms, and certainly it's easier to drop into that relaxed state. We in hypnotherapy you'd call it the trance state, but it's basically a deeply relaxed state. It's easier to get there when we're not thinking a million things. But the trouble is, like, if we're trying to do it at a time when our brain is really busy, what we'll tend to do is sit there thinking, oh, I can't relax right now. I'm not thinking the right things, and we get into the anxiety of worrying about the thoughts rather than just kind of accepting those thoughts and going, you know what, my brain is busy right now, but I'll just let them be, or just ignore them and they'll sort themselves out. And it's okay to let my brain kind of freewheel because that's me processing a lot of stuff. So I think there's absolutely beauty in finding your own time of day that just feels good. For me, I tend to be more on the hoof. It will just be like, do you know, I've been working quite hard and I know that a few minutes break now will just refresh me and do me good. So I'll try and kind of catch those little windows, or just having a bit of time around the kids. It doesn't really matter when, it's got to work for you. And that is the key thing. And I think out there's so much talk, you see all the people talking about getting up at 5 a.m. to do their stuff. And it's like, you've got to have this really set morning routine. Otherwise you're not doing the right things for success. And I think we can take those things to literally sometimes, and you've just got to find your own way with it. You've just got to do what works for you and do the things that you know are your bones that are going to support you however it works for you. Definitely, like in the early stages of parenthood, that was a total lifesaver for me.
Oh, that's really interesting. I've been doing quite a lot of work around self-care and empowerment, which is probably something Joe never thought I was ever going to say. And and one of the things that's really come up is just listening to your body and hearing, like, I don't know, like, I haven't eaten for a while, I really ought to eat something, or like, I'm thirsty, or, you know, those kind of things. And then just realizing, okay, mate, actually, what's the tool here? You know, is it that I need to eat or something, or is it that I need to give myself 5 minutes to sit in my own thoughts and just experience whatever they are, and then make a plan or then move on, but just giving myself that moment to do whatever I need to do to process.
Yeah, because we often like jump into our day and we're just so in it straight away, aren't we? And we don't even connect with ourselves in any way at all. We're like watching somebody else almost going about their day. So just whenever you can find that time to kind of breathe and connect with yourself and say, how am I today? What do I need right now? Because our brain would like to keep us busy and on the go all the time. When we get into doing mode and stress mode and anxiety mode, it just wants to keep us going, and it's just like it's seeing a million little fires burning all around us that we have to put out, and we kind of have to consciously step in sometimes and say, it's okay, I can leave those things just for 5 minutes now, just to step back from it and just put down all the busy and let my brain work out what's needed and what my priorities really are.
Absolutely. I think, if we actually listen to the internal dialogue, it speaks so much faster than any person ever speaking to us. And it's not always us that's speaking, is it? It's sometimes it's an old school teacher or an old colleague or a parent or someone that's talking. And it's that, Zoe always says about the shoulds, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And someone said to me once, I was being coached by a health coach helping me. And I was always, I shouldn't have done that. And I should have done this. And I didn't eat the right thing, or I didn't do this. And she helped me turn it around a little bit in my head by, rather than judging myself, just being curious about the actions I've taken. And just rather than going, oh, you shouldn't have done that, going, I wonder why I did that. And just changing that language rather than having a go at myself has really helped. And I think it's helped me with lots of things, because I have learned over the years in business to take responsibility for things that they don't go perfectly right. Now, so when I first started doing that, it was much better than I used to be like, oh, clients, they're useless. Oh, staff, they're such a pain. Oh, if I didn't have clients and staff, everything would be so much easier. That's how I used to be. And then I started taking ownership, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how did you let that happen? That was your fault. And that was one extreme to another, but it was still horrible. Whereas now I'm like, okay, that's happened. Not great. What can I learn? How can I do something so that that never happens again, and that I'm not going to firefight in that situation? And it's so, I think it's just it's that language and trying to help the inner dialogue. And Paul McKenna actually says, because I've been on some of his trainings, he says, like, try and turn it into a funny voice so that you smile when you hear it. And it really does help, because it's saying the same thing, but it's saying it like, he always turned his a little bit like into a old Greek uncle, that I don't know why, but it was really funny to listen to. And it's those kind of little tools that you can't help. You're always going to have an inner dialogue. No one's ever going to switch it off, but we can help to live with it and make it a little bit more useful, rather than feel like come away feeling like we're being beaten up all the time.
Absolutely. And I think very often as well, we are so good at focusing on all the negative stuff about ourselves or our choices or what we're doing, aren't we? And we never say, okay, where's the alternative to that? Like that. So that's the stuff my mind's feeding me. What do I want to be thinking instead? Or like, what can I see in this situation that was good? So you're saying about all the things you should have done. Well, how about turning it around and saying, what have I done that's been good? Where are my little signs of progress? Where are my green shoots that I can nurture and feel really proud of, and focus on those instead? And that can help to really start to calm down that inner critic and just make it feel a little bit softer and a little bit less insistent. And we can gradually start to ease it off and train our brain to learn to see the positives a bit more. I mean, we are, as humans, we're negativity machines. We're designed that way because we have to be, or had to be back in our ancestral times, like aware of threat all around us all the time. We have to switch onto that. But if we can help to tell our brains that there is an alternative to that mood, and that it's okay, and that it's safe, and that we are living quite a nice life, really, it helps that panic button to calm down, if you like.
panic button. That's a really good way to put it. I've done a lot of work with Abi, and I know, and I think we've like made it sound like Abi is like the female version of Paul McKenna. That's not true. Abi does so much, but it's a great way to sort of start the conversation, because I remember us doing a lot of work around like I think the thing I got stuck in was this loop of what if that happens, what if that happens, and it's like a fight or flight response, and then it's like predicting something that isn't even, there's no reason even rationally to be thinking about that. So what, you know, and it stops you moving forward. And you mentioned the inner critic, and we really wanted to talk to you today about having a fear of success, or an internal dialogue that tells us we can't be successful, or what if something goes wrong, or I'm not able to do it, I'm not capable, I'm not X, Y, and Z. And one of the questions we wrote down when we were planning for this was to talk to you about what does it mean to have the fear of success, but also why on earth would we fear success? Like, why would we try and stop ourselves from being successful? I think that's really hard to get your head around.
It is. It makes very little sense on the surface, doesn't it? It's talked about a lot, but we're all like, well, I want success. I know consciously that I want success. I don't fear it. So I think quite often there's this duality of like, there's this thing I want, and I'm really gunning for the success, but I'm being told by my mentors and coaches that I've probably got a fear of it at the same time, and it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to us. What's often going on is a couple of things. First of all, we really fear any kind of change deep down subconsciously. Like, no matter how good that change is, we would often rather sit in the discomfort. Our brain is wired to want to stay where it is, no matter how bad things are. Or let's say it's got to take a pretty big push to make us move towards something better very often. So, like, consciously, we know that changing our lives, earning more money, whatever it might be, taking on more clients is going to be a good thing. Subconsciously, our brain's like, no, because that's the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen in that situation, and therefore I'm not set up to protect you against that. So what I am set up to protect you against is the stuff that's already happening, the things that you don't really like, but they're kind of okay. We're getting through each day. It's not that bad. So our subconscious brain's sitting in there while we're like, I want the thing, I want the thing. And there's this kind of fight going on between the two parts of our brain. And you probably even notice that for yourself in your own thoughts at times. Like, you'll have this brilliant idea and you're like, yeah, that's the most amazing thing. And then 5 minutes later, you'll talk yourself out of it.
100%. And when you're talking, what came up for me was feeling like, it's really weird because I've never thought about it in that way. But the more successful you are, it's like the further you've got to fall.
Yeah.
That's how it felt like when you was talking then. I was like, yeah, because the more success you have, it's a bigger drop to the bottom. And it really like is like, and I think it's really important to like think where you getting that feeling, because I felt that in my tummy, and I'm not a very good traveler. Anyone that knows, train with me is awful, and it felt like a travel sickness. Like, oh my god, imagine falling from a higher height. So, and I'm wondering, where does this stuff come from? Is it like learned, or is it like the ancestral brain, or is it learned things that have happened maybe at primary school or in those developmental years, or is it just is it a bit of both?
I think we learn through our language along the way that success is up here, it's higher, and therefore there's a big drop. You know, this you're setting yourself up for a fall, that kind of thing is very much wired into our cultural conscience, isn't it? Consciousness even. So we in our minds have it represented very much as a very high thing and a very low thing, and our brain latches onto that, and it's like, oh, look at that gap, that's really scary, that's really dangerous. And our brain always goes to the worst case scenario. So if we're in our minds eye higher up, then it feels like there's further to fall, whereas actually that's just our brain playing out our worst case scenario. Chances are things would never get that bad, and actually whether you fall from here to there or from there to there, you're still there. Still the same place. So I think there's a lot of that, and I can't remember quite the other part of that you were.
No, it's really, it's sort of why would we fear the success? And I suppose it's because the change and the the risk of it not, the great success being taken away from us, and how would we feel if that happened, and us trying to protect ourselves from it, I suppose. One of the things that keeps coming up in the chat is who mentioned about having imposter syndrome. Somebody did, and so we talk about imposter syndrome a lot, and whether you believe that's a thing, a syndrome or not. Like it's a thing we tell ourselves is a reason we're not doing something, which maybe is it can become an excuse. But I get it that we feel this difference in ourselves versus our expectation of what everyone else is able to do and capable of. For some reason we hold ourselves back as different. There are lots of ways we block ourselves here, aren't there?
Loads. And part two of why we fear success, I don't know, I didn't quite touch on this yet, but it's often like what lies the other side of that success is, what are people going to think of me when I'm there? And that massively ties in with that imposter syndrome thing, doesn't it? And it's often linked back to our cultural perceptions of what we have thought of successful people, what we've been trained to think of successful people along the way. And our brain sat there going like, oh, if I got to that point, then, I'd be different from everybody else. I would be other. And that doesn't feel very good. And I've been told all the way along that, successful people aren't very nice. I've been shown this on TV throughout my life. It's what I've been programmed into again. I don't want to be that person. And so again, we've got that resistance. We've got that, I do want the success, but I'm like repelling against it all the way and repelling it. And I think tied up in that, along the way, we've been trained from childhood that we need to be successful and we need to be good and we need to keep pushing to get those exam results. And so on, and success almost becomes like something we have to strive for all along the way, and we have to achieve, or we're not good enough, but we constantly put ourselves in that box of, I'm not good enough yet, I've got to get there, and I'll get there one day. But I'm not deserving of it yet. We're kind of always sat in that place of, one day I'll be successful, one day I'll feel good enough. And overcoming imposter syndrome, we've really got to a place where we're like, I feel good enough now, and I really accept myself for who I am now, and I'm really pleased with everything I've achieved so far. And I might want more. That's great. There's nothing wrong with wanting more. But if we can come at wanting more from that place of feeling really grounded and really comfortable with where we're at now, it becomes so much easier. And we're just not sitting in that imposter place all the time where we're constantly criticizing ourselves and giving ourselves a hard time.
Like pack mentality, isn't it? And, if you think about, pack of animals or anything, you want to stay in the tribe. You don't want to like push yourself above everyone. Who do you think you are? Actually, leaving the pack, leaving the tribe means you are, you're liable to get killed by a tiger or something. You need to stay with everyone. So actually you can imagine why. And then, you think of, I've experienced this before. I've got, two separate sides of the family, dad's side, mum's side. And I remember having conversations when, the conversation as a family unit about people that were successful. Was that Sunday dinner conversation? Was it like, oh, wow, did you see so-and-so have smashed this and they've done that? Isn't it amazing? Or was it like, have you seen her down the road? Seen what she's up to? That's dodgy, isn't it? What do you reckon she's doing to get that car? That kind of thing. It wasn't big. And I really try with our family to use that. I'm like, wow, look at that car, isn't it amazing? Wonder what they do for it, like, and try and make it a positive thing, because it definitely wasn't always positive in fact. And then you think about at school, even on the playground, someone's got new trainers or whatever, everyone felt bad about the fact that they had these and they couldn't have it, so they'd make out that they were a bad person for upgrading their life. So you can see why it's easier to stay where you're at, because you've got friends, family, everyone knows where you are. I've had it quite a lot recently, actually, when I've met with people, extended family or whatever, and they've said, so what is it that you do? And the look on their face is like, I don't get it. I don't get what it is. What are you doing? And you can tell that it's not made them happy, whatever. And so, and it's interesting, it does, but I know that there's a bigger purpose and I'm happy and I'm helping other people and I'm absolutely okay with it. But it doesn't mean, and we talk about this like new levels, new devils, it doesn't mean that you will have like a new barrage of conversations going on in your head, an internal dialogue when you do something new. And then there's going to be the external we have, we always talk about like imposter syndrome being an internal thing and not real, and I completely get it, but sometimes it is reality that family, friends and other people aren't happy with you moving forward. That is true, isn't it? So we have to kind of balance it, and I think poo-pooing it and saying it's not real, it's something we've made up is sometimes it's because I have experienced it. I know that I've had friendship groups in the past, and I had to avoid going on the school playground at some points because with my older children, I get on there and the conversations that people were having, I'm like, I've just been in this nice high place having these great conversations with clients and things. I come on here and people are bitching and moaning, and I'm like, oh, you're bringing me down. I feel like I've elevated and I don't want to. So I think it is an internal thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can feel like a very real thing. And to push ourselves out there, we have to physically push ourselves forward, don't we?
Yeah. It's a really brave and scary thing to do. And we're very good at like working out for ourselves what other people might be thinking and kind of making judgments on that sometimes. So we sometimes imagine what other people might be thinking, and that can be a whole thing in itself that limits us. But yeah, very definitely it is. We do come up against reactions within family and friends and within the wider world, and it takes a lot of self-confidence, a lot of self-assurance to keep plodding on and not listen to those. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of those reactions are basically those people are jumping into a place of negativity and fear themselves because they're afraid for you, or they don't quite understand. You say it's something they wouldn't do, so they just don't get it. They're not on board with it because they don't see your big vision. They don't see all the positive stuff that you're seeing. It's all just like, whoa, what is she doing? This is really, really out there, really, really scary. And like, bless them, our close relatives sometimes will jump in there and want to defend us and say, are you sure this is a good thing to be doing? Or like, they might not be very good at putting it across in a gentle, compassionate way, and it might sound very much like harsh criticism. Very often they have our best interests at heart, but they're just not expressing it in a very supportive way. And I think that's worth being mindful of. But we've got to be our own biggest cheerleaders and like gently stick to what we're doing and just keep persuading people and showing them, almost like not having a sort of verbal argument with them and persuading them in that way, but maybe just showing them through our actions and through carrying on with what we're doing and being positive about it ourselves. It starts to spread out. We mirror each other, and people will eventually pick up on our certainty and confidence and positive vibes. But yeah, it takes that self-confidence, that deep self-assurance to hold that position and not let it get to you. So yeah,
I think having people around you who are going through the same thing is really crucial as well. And I that's just even looking at the chat here, you just, everyone here has felt that. I was on the school playground the other day and someone said, we were talking about work, and someone's like, well, I know what you do because my son watches you on TikTok. Your son's on TikTok. But it's, it's hard. What about though, when we stop ourselves from taking action? So a lot of people, I do a marketing Q&A every month, and we talk about various things you can be doing. We were talking this morning about some tools you could do using Canva and ChatGPT and things like that for marketing. And sometimes people will say, well, I haven't done it. I'm just procrastinating on it because I'm not quite sure. And I'm not sure why, but I'm just procrastinating on this. And I think there's something about the language we use, like imposter syndrome, procrastination, that actually stops us doing things, or we use those words as a mechanism to stop ourselves from moving forward. But what's going on when we procrastinate about things?
Oh, it's my favorite. Lots of different things can be going on. So it can be that whole fear of where we're going thing, or the fear of failure, as you mentioned earlier, and how far we've got to fall if it all goes wrong. But I mean, procrastination can also be that it's just not something that we're quite aligned with deep down. So we might be thinking, really want to get that because it's going to get me to my goals, but maybe it's not comfortable for us on some level, and so we're resisting it for that reason. Like maybe we've got some subconscious work to do before it's aligned, or maybe we need to explore a different path. Sometimes it can just be looking at the work we've got to do and feeling overwhelmed by it, and it's either it's a big project, it's a big thing we've got to take on and we don't feel very sure of ourselves in that, or maybe it's like a new challenge that we haven't done before, and our brain's just kind of like, whoa, I can see this big wall I've got to climb over and I don't quite know how I'm going to climb over it yet, so I'll just sit on the other side of the wall for now. That's easier. Go and have a cup of tea. So really like breaking those challenges down into smaller bits. We often hear about that, and I think that's so critical, not to overwhelm yourself with the magnitude or the scale of the project, and just to maybe get the help along the way that you need if you need it. What else? We can procrastinate on things just when we're just not quite in the right frame of mind because we're not listening to ourselves, like we were saying earlier. So maybe we're not getting enough sleep, maybe we've got a bit too much brain fog and anxiety going on. Sometimes we can only move forward positively when we've like put the foundations in place for ourselves, and it's not that it's wrong, it's not that we don't want to do it, it's just that our brain is too stressed out and too overwhelmed to move forward, and that's absolutely a thing. So
I've definitely noticed that, Abby. I've definitely noticed that I kind of, and I think it's because I'm trying to, like Zoe said, try and listen into my body more. Sometimes I'll get to, it's usually about 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I will try and attack something and do something, and there's resistance. And I'm like, and I've started listening to that resistance more and more, because I realise that actually we joke because Gemma, our VA, she's up very early in the morning, and literally after I've done my 10 minutes of meditation, we're working. And I think sometimes we've definitely started about 6:45, 7 a.m. And actually, when I think by the time 3-4 o'clock has come, we've done many hours of work, and my brain is starting to feel tired. And I have started to listen to that cue, and I've stopped any meetings after 2:30 in the afternoon. Well, the final time you can book in is 2:30, so I'll be finished by 3. I've made my work life fit around the fact that usually I'm just tired. My brain is just tired, and actually, it's not. I used to think it was procrastination or laziness or something, but actually, what I find is if I step away from the computer, go and be with the family, potter around, make dinner, whatever, usually I'll get another little surge later on. And I can do something, but it's in my time. And so I think it's about listening, exactly like Zoe said, listening more, not straight when I used to be like, oh, there you go, you've run out of energy, right? Your brain's gone, you procrastinate. And I'd start with this negative self-talk, but actually, I just need a break. And actually, when I started thinking about, we do start early, we're up, we literally, like you said, we're into our days straight away. So no wonder we're a bit tired. It's not like we have a nice lazy morning, read the newspaper, have a breakfast. If anyone does that, that's amazing. But for me, that is not how my day starts. Get up and we're running and starting the day. So so that's really helped me. So maybe we need to think about, when does procrastination hit? If it's like it feels like a daily occurrence. And is it maybe that we just need to step away for a bit and have a refresh?
Totally. We forget we're human a lot of the time. We think we're machines and we can just keep going all day. We have, as well as circadian rhythms, we have something called ultradian rhythms, I think it is. And that's like we work in 90-minute cycles, and our brain can do intense activity for 90 minutes, and then it becomes almost counterproductive after that time. Like, when you've been reading for a long time and you're just rereading the same paragraph over and over and over, because your brain's just like, I can't do this anymore, I just need a break. And it can be like 5-10 minutes or so. That's all you need to refresh and get yourself out of that slump. But very often we're just like forcing it and making it harder and harder for ourselves, and then beating ourselves up because we've exhausted ourselves and we're not getting any further, and that just furthers the procrastination, all that negative thinking and stress. So if we can break our day up, and I'm totally guilty of it, I'll sit there and just plow away at a piece of work for a few hours if I'm excited by it. But if we can just try and remember to take a little break when we start to feel that brain fog coming in, rather than giving ourselves a hard time for it. Yeah, we're often flying again before we know it. So.
It's like a new version of the Pomodoro Technique. Like just take that little, do a little bit, take a little break. It's like 25-5, isn't it? But I like that, an hour and a half, because you could do a meaty bit of work in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But then like giving yourself a little break and a reset is quite a nice way to break the day up. So give that a try. Yeah. So we've covered a lot, and I realise that we've been chatting for a while. But before I wrap up, when we think about these obstacles that come up for us, then in terms of think where we might be getting in our own way in terms of successes that we really want. You know, Joe and I ran a session this morning at 11, and we were talking about what's your goal for the rest of 2023. And hopefully there are people here who have either said what their goal is, or they're thinking about what their goal is. But maybe sometimes we're maybe too afraid to really set the big goal because it just feels too big. How do we start to overcome these kind of obstacles so we can really set ourselves goals that can drive us forward and we take seriously and we believe in ourselves that we're able to achieve?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to make it achievable. So you may have heard of SMART goals, I'm sure you guys have, but making it a goal that is doable, but it stretches you a little bit. It's slightly exciting. It's slightly out of your comfort zone, but it's not so far out of your comfort zone that your brain's just like, no. To achieve anything, we've got to believe that it's possible for us. That is the number one rule of achieving anything. We've got to believe it. And so have a real think about those goals and whether you can like maybe just stretch them or move them, or even if they're feeling a bit too big and overwhelming at the moment, like bringing them back down to a level that does feel achievable. Maybe even making the time scale a bit shorter and saying, okay, if I'm a bit daunted by my 6-month goal for the rest of the year, then what do I think I could achieve in the next 2 or 3 months? And maybe focusing on that as a smaller thing rather than that massive big achievement that you've got to do in 6 months' time. I'm quite a big fan of like quarterly goal setting. I find that really works for me. But again, it's about what works for you and what motivates you. And if it's breaking it down to a couple of weeks and what you want to get done over that time scale or whatever, then go with it. You know, go with what's motivating and what feels believable and doable for you. In terms of planning out the strategy, I think it's great to have an idea of where you're going. I think it's nice to have a strategic overview of how you can get those things. Kind of nice to see the numbers on the page, like if you say, I want this financial goal, that will need that many clients, or I'll need to do this many calls to achieve that many clients. And having those kinds of things does definitely help us take the action steps towards it. But also I think not being too rigidly set in a concrete action plan, because half the time we can sit there creating the plan and doing none of the actual work. So for me, it's about like setting some anchors, setting some kind of bigger blocks along that path towards achieving the goals. And then saying, what's my first step? What's the little thing that I can do now that's going to move me positively towards that? It's going to be the easiest thing I can do to start seeing some progress and building some momentum and feeling good about this thing. Because it's from that and getting the reward of that first small achievement that we get motivated to go on and do the next thing. So like, what is that small step that you can take? And also being open to options as well, because very often our brain's kind of busy in the background, finding ways that we can get to those goals quicker. If we're good and specific about them, if we know where we're headed, we'll have that initial plan and we'll be like, yeah, that's definitely the way to go. And then we'll get an idea that's like, oh, I wonder if I tried that. No, we've got to stick to the original plan. We might miss something really important because our subconscious is constantly fine-tuning and trying to find better, easier paths for us to get to where we want to be. So it's quite important to listen to those little flashes of inspiration and check in with whether they are aligned with your end goal, of course. But don't be afraid to deviate a bit from that path if it feels like it will still get you to the end. So
I think this is this is where like the woo-woo side comes in, because we kind of, and I think, you know, there is science behind the woo-woo stuff, because it's actually, like you said, our subconscious is so amazing and can help us, but it doesn't half the time it doesn't know where we're heading, so it can't help us. So if we have a strategic plan, or if we manifest, they're the same kind of thing. We're putting it out to the universe or whatever. We're putting it out there on a piece of paper, and we're saying, this is where we'd like to head. And then our subconscious does this amazing thing while we're sleeping, comes up with ideas that we didn't even know. I've had it this week with my best friend, Berenice. She is a dance teacher at schools. And she's been going through she's had some coaching, and she said, I want she's always been scared of having a dance school. She's never wanted a dance school, but she came up with this idea. I'd like a dance studio, one room that is mine, that I can rent out some other times, but I can do what I want. And it was, she only thought of this last week. She was like, I'm really excited by this goal. And then, this week an opportunity's come up. And she's like, what?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
So it's and now she's going down the woo-woo path. She's not doing anything to strategy, but she's kind of declared it to her own mind. And her mind's gone, okay, let's have whatever's happening, whether it's manifestation or whether it's strategy, it doesn't matter. I think we get to the same goal. It depends on how the kind of person that you are, and our brains are fantastic. But a bit like a sat nav, if you've not put the destination in, it doesn't know where you're heading. So you're going round and round and round the roundabout.
Exactly. Yeah, as soon as you put that destination in, your brain can then filter what you're experiencing based on what you want. So it's not that necessarily there are more opportunities around you. It's just that you start seeing them, the blinkers come off, and you're like, ooh, that could work. And the ideas start to drop in. So I think I wrote a little bit in my book about if you say to yourself, like, I want to achieve, I don't know, 10k months over the next year, then your brain's going to come up with 10k ideas. If you say, I want to achieve 7 figures over the next year, your brain's going to start to generate 7-figure ideas. Now, that 7 figures might feel a little bit daunting if you're at the beginning of your journey or whatever, but the quality of the information that goes in is what you get out of the system. So but it's fantastic. It's sometimes things just seem like such a massive universal coincidence, and that's where the woo-woo side of things starts to come in. Like, what is going on here? Is it just my brain, or is there something more to this? But does it matter? I just think, like, if it's working, it's working.
Love it. Oh my gosh, this has been amazing. Do you know what, as well, what I really love, I love this community, completely unprompted. People are sharing in the chat their favorite mantras, so I'm going to read some of them out because I love them. Kath said, my favorite mantra: if you say you can, you can. If you say you can't, you can't. Then Julie has said she believes she could, so she did. And then Sam's finished with, I can, I will, watch me. I love all the positivity. Abi, can you let us know a bit about how people can connect with you? I know you have an amazing podcast as well, so please tell us how we can find out more about what you do.
I do. So the podcast is called Align and Arise. And yeah, you can find that on most of your podcast players if you just do a little search, Align and Arise. Probably the best way to find out more about me is my website at the moment. I am on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, but www.abigail-rogers.com. I've got a free 21-day e-course on there that I've just launched, which is really, really exciting. And that's called Worthy, Wealthy and Wise. And I'm getting some lovely feedback from that and some really good insights that are coming through. And that is all about, tackling those subconscious beliefs, tackling the imposter syndrome stuff, and elevating your sense of self-worth and confidence so that you can go out there and create what you want to. So perfect for anybody who's listening to this and needs a little bit of a boost.
Amazing. Oh, thanks so much for spending the time with us this afternoon, Abi, and thanks everyone who's been here live as well. Lovely to see you. Joe and I are actually going to be back this evening for anyone who's joining along with Bookkeepers Bootcamp, so we'll see you in the Six Figure Bookkeepers Club at 6:30. But for now, thanks ever so much. See you soon. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.